guys, let's talk about this. Is my favorite topic of the night. I'm so worried. Just like it's like no, I shouldn't say that because I hate it. But so I watched Collision and belatedly, and just being like, I got to see what happens in this stupid little cage match. It was so dumb. This cage match was so fucking dumb. I feel like lit up about it. So the setup that they did in the show in Collision was that at the beginning of Collision, Matt Menard found Danny Garcia's prone little limp body backstage, like he'd been attacked. And so he'd been attacked, and they didn't know if he was going to be able to fight. So FTR did this thing where they were like loitering outside his dressing room. I guess he was in there with the doctor or something. And Mark Briscoe came by and was like, well, if Danny Garcia can't fight, I would love to fight with you guys. It would be so fun to fight. And they were like, well, maybe we're going to leave it up to Danny, but we'll see. And so then when we got to the main event, FTR come out, Mark Briscoe comes out like he's going to fight with them. And then classic little House of Black stupid shit. Lights go out. Lights come back on. They attack Mark Briscoe. There's fighting. Danny Garcia does come out. Everybody ends up, finally, they make it into the cage.
Mark Briscoe kind of just disappeared at this point, too. Did you guys see where he went?
No, but
he comes back at the end. Yeah, but it's like in the middle. I was just like, where did he just like limp away to the back? Like, I
did think it was funny that it was like, does he want to be in this match or not? Because I want to, let's touch on this up front. Who do you think, this was also dumb, but who do you think beat Danny Garcia up?
I don't know. The Bleacher Recap guy thinks it was Matt Menard, and that will make me cry.
No,
that's
I think
wild.
Danny Garcia would know that it was Matt Menard. I think it could have been Mark Briscoe.
Yeah, that would be
He did
cool.
want to be in the match. That would be cool.
I would be in the match.
I was just assuming it was House of Black, but that would be really
I know.
boring.
Well, but then it's like they didn't make it clear. This is it's like this. It was so crazy where I was like, this is so overcomplicated. Like you're just throwing so much stuff at me that I don't really understand why it's happening this episode. But at the same time, I don't think commentary ever really explained to me the rules of this match. So they get in this fucking cage, and there's two things.
They kind of explain them like partially, like halfway through the match. They start being like, and now let's go through the rules. And I was like, yeah, I'd love to know the rules, to be honest.
They're in the cage, and they don't want to be in the cage. What don't you understand? I was like, a lot of things, to be honest. Because occasionally, like, the cage is locked. They're locked in the cage.
They made like a big deal out of it. Like, commentary was like, and now the cage door is being locked. And it was like dramatically, like a referee was like putting a padlock or some shit on it.
But then every now and then, if someone got near the door, someone would just open it for them.
But the ref opened it in the funniest way too. Like when you like open a fire escape door because you want to go smoke outside and you're like, hold this open for me, and you like slip out. Like that is how that ref was holding that door open.
And the funny thing too is that like it started, like they're fighting this like a normal wrestling match. Then like House of Black beats down like FTR and Danny Garcia, and commentary is finally like, to win, you have to escape the cage. And then House of Black starts like climbing the walls of the cage, which doesn't have a top on it. So I'm like, oh, they have to like climb out the top of the cage. Like, okay,
it's a presidential fitness test.
Right.
Pretty much.
I was like, that's kind of weird, but like, okay. But then like 5 minutes later, the ref is just opening the door for people. I'm like, why are we climbing the cage then?
The door should not have been part of it in any way.
No.
You
understand.
The vibe was like Cat trying to go in and out. And it's like the ref is like the permissive cat mom who keeps being like, okay, well, I'll let you out again, but I'm not letting you back in again. But then 5 minutes later, it's like the cat scratching. So it's like, okay, I'll let you back in, but I'm not letting you out again.
Also, like, none of them had any urgency about getting out of the cage. So, like, FTR and Danny Garcia, like, beat down House of Black. They're all lying on the floor. They take, like, a minute to, like, high-five each other and walk around the ring and then, like, kind of meander towards the door. And then Danny Garcia was like, no, we're not done with them yet. And then they just beat them up more. Like, but you could have won the match.
I know we literally just made fun of people who think wrestling is real, but it does absolutely, like, it's worse than ladder matches. Like, I have learned to suspend my belief where I'm like, he can't make it up the ladder that fast. He can only go up one ring every 15 seconds. Yeah. Like, but for this, like, it took so long for anyone to be remotely interested in escaping the cage. And if the situation was like, you have to pin somebody and then get out of the cage, that's one thing. But like, why would you ever waste time beating somebody up? Because you're
just battle out of the cage. Well, and they forced me to suspend my disbelief so much more than any Young Bucks spot fest ever has. Like, I was like, this is
Yeah.
nonsense. This is absolute nonsense.
Well, and the way the commentary set it up too was like they were like, there's a lot of strategy because like you have to get all three of your guys out to win, but like once one of your guys is out, he can't come back in, so then you're at like a numerical disadvantage. So you've got to like try to all get out at the same time instead of one at a time, so you don't have like a 2-on-1 situation. But it's like, so you've set up a match where they have like contradictory wants. So it's like they're both having a regular wrestling match in the middle that they need numbers for, but also they need to climb out of the cage. Whereas like, at least in a ladder match, like everyone's just trying to climb the ladder, you know, like it's not this situation where you're like half climbing out, but then you get knocked out and you land through a table and commentary's like, he's escaped. And you're like, okay, sure.
Well, and
Didn't
I
look
thought
fun.
it was also just a strangely choreographed match too, where it's like they got in there and literally, like, I swear to God, a minute into this match, Mr. Cash Gunn has glided up to the top of the cage, and you're like, he's out. But then he's like, no, I'm actually going to do a big jump spot now. I'm jumping back into the cage. And it's like, bitch, the point is to escape the cage. You're not hurting anybody. No one has ever hurt anyone in wrestling by jumping on them, ever.
And that's how you know that Nick Jackson did not touch any part of this match layout. Why the fuck was he doing a crazy cage dive within 30 seconds of it starting? I'm like, that's not how this works. You're like, that's supposed to be the big finisher.
Yeah. And it's like with the door involved, it was just ridiculous because it's like, why are you trying to climb out at all if you could just walk to the door and get let out? So like if the whole thing had been like you have to climb out of the cage, it would have been like, it would have been better at least.
That's true because I do not know what indicated to the ref, I will open the door. Like, if you can open the door, presumably everyone could just tumble towards the door real fast and you'd have to open it and they tumble out of the cage.
Yeah, and commentary was like, and now the door's of course locked again, and they're all locked in the cage. It's like, what are the door locking parameters?
I know that people who have seen this kind of match before are going to be screaming at their phones, being
I
like,
don't care. No,
hey, this is the rules, but you know, they didn't explain it.
Is this a standard kind of cage match though, where people climb out? Because my impression from the internet was that it wasn't, but I
don't think they invented it, but it isn't the most normal type of cage match,
and it shouldn't be.
To assume.
I should not.
No one should be doing
shouldn't
this.
see this. The only way that I ever want to see this again is if it's like private party versus top flight. Like, I want to see little like monkey boys trying to get up and pulling each other down. I don't want to see any of this bullshit.
Yeah,
it would be interesting if it had been put together by someone who knows how to put together a match like Nick Jackson or Bryan Danielson or OC or somebody where it like actually built to something instead of being like we're doing coordinated climbs up the cage that don't make any sense.
Daniel Garcia just got misted in the middle of the match for no reason. Were you guys paying attention to the part where the Cash and someone else were like dangling? Like they were like almost out of the cage, but they didn't want to drop or something. Yeah. And then commentary's just like, and Cash fell onto the table, which is like, that's the stupidest table spot I've ever seen. No one made you do that. Like you didn't have to do that.
Why was the table even set up? Like
but
who did
commentary said, oh no, Cash has fallen onto the table that was set up before the match began.
So okay.
New York Times passive tense. Just like, who set up the table? Who could say?
Who could say?
We're just having a potluck after the match. Like, don't worry about it.
Sometimes you just like to have a table around. Just makes me feel safe.
No, and I didn't hear commentary explaining the strategy that people should have. And that's even funnier considering what actually happened, which is that Dax and Cash left their smallest, most injured member in the cage alone at the end.
I know, Daniel and the Lion, baby.
Like if you were gonna do the strategy that you mentioned, Anne, wouldn't you send Daniel Garcia out of the cage first and like protect him? Like Dax and Cash are like guarding the part of the fence that he's like climbing. What the fuck is that?
I thought it was fully insane that Dax got out first. And then the other thing about that with the like strategy conversation was they each basically left the cage in pairs. So there weren't really situations where one like there was a numerical advantage. Like
no.
So
they literally did buddy system. They did full buddy system and they were like, no, we
one
won't
of each of us.
I won't leave the cage without one of my friends from the other team.
I'm genuinely worried that this absolutely fucking nonsensical ass match was the match that I have watched closest since I don't know the last time that like I watched a match with every part of my senses.
But it's not complimentary. I mean, it's like
No, it is not complimentary.
I mean, there's a certain kind of like hate watching, hate reading that really does draw you in, you know, and it's not a good thing.
The passionate distaste that I felt for everything that I was seeing.
Oh, it was awful.
The final thing. Oh no, go.
Well, I was just gonna say at the end when like FTR and Danny Garcia and Mark Briscoe interfered to help, like when they won and then they were all just like hugging each other ecstatically for like a long time. I was like, this is not sympathetic. I don't like you guys.
Daniel Garcia got mega misted too. By the way, he didn't just get like a little puff on his face. Man looked like he got slimed, like a Nickelodeon slimed.
Yeah, it was repulsive.
It's fucking crazy. Sometimes it's like whenever I do happen to see FTR do stuff, I'm just so astonished to remember that it's like one time you were in a heel faction, and then you became faces. You changed nothing about yourself. You became faces, and you were like, no one will ever call us bad guys again. And so you watch their stupid promos that they were doing about this, and they're so like, we're good guys, Mark Briscoe, and so we got to do what's right for Danny Garcia for our big cage match. We got to wait and make sure that he's doing okay. It's so stupid. This is the final thing I want to say about it, okay? I had an idea where I was like, escape the cage match. Could this just be kind of a mousetrap match where it's like you know when this is what I wrote in the notes when the witch in Hansel and Gretel is being like, oh, the oven's not turning on, just check to see if it's turning on, and then she's gonna put them in the oven. Escape the cage should be like, you're gonna do an escape the cage match, and they get them all in there and then close a door and they lift the cage up, and I never see those men again.
Keep running. The farther you escape, the more you win.
The cage escapes with them, and they're gone from my life. Yeah, no, the cage takes them away.
I love that.
Oh, the cage takes them away. Yeah,
Solve
up
a lot
into the
of problems.
rafters. I say bye.
I love that.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Remember when someone was in a shark cage?
I was just thinking about that. It was because I don't remember who Jericho was fighting, but they made the Jericho Appreciation Society go into a shark.
Yeah,
the
cage.
shark cage. But then Daniel Garcia just turned sideways and slid out.
And they like couldn't open the lock, and people, wow. That was also very stupid, but it was a great example of vertical integration, which I did love. So
Yeah,
for sure,
so fun. And it was so stupid that it was fun. And this was so stupid that it was, I guess I did have fun, but I don't come out of it liking the men more. That's what I'll say.
Yeah.
No, I'm humiliated for them.
It did seem ultimately sillier than just getting pinned.
I
Like, it was
know.
like, this is how hard you're working to not get pinned? Like,
It was
even
so
stupid. You all look so
undignified.
dumb.
Even in the early part of the match, like I feel like in the early part when they weren't even trying to escape yet, like there were a lot of spots where like Malachi just like kicks Dax's head against the cage and like holds him there, like with his face pressed against the chain link for like a minute. I was like, you guys look like idiots.
They look so stupid. Middle-aged men, I'm sorry, you cannot scamper down a chain link fence in panties with any sort of dignity. Like,
No.
none of the House of Black and none of FTR. Daniel Garcia only managed it because he is like a little wiggle monster.
He's just a squirmy little
He's just a
twink.
squirmy-
So it's just like, that twink's just dancing in there. Good for him.
When FTR's diapered ass butt is like, and he's like so nervous because he's like checking to see how far the drop is, and he's like, oh, I can't do that, a little bit lower, and then
Yeah.
this worst thing. This is better than getting pinned. You feel better about this?
That's the thing is like if there were people in there who like were comfortable looking silly, it would be like an AEW style disaster that was very charming. But because these guys are so committed to being very macho and dignified all the time, you're just like, Dax, you're the dumbest person alive. This looks terrible.
It just felt so absurd after a whole week of discourse where everyone on planet Earth was being like, actually, Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez, everyone was really good sports, and this was just the match that everyone wanted to have, and because it was going to be a good match, and they wanted to do a good match, and had nothing to do with getting pinned. Actually, they're happy to get pinned, and it's like, if they were happy to get pinned, they would be getting pinned because that would be a better match. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, that would be a better, and they would look cooler. Instead, everyone looks so fucking stupid, which is good for me because I hate them. I'm glad that I can watch the men I hate look dumb as hell.
That's right.
Well, that's all we got. That's all, folks.